All right, welcome back to Off Crypto Cuff with your hosts Jesse and Jeff here. We're two guys, friends who talk crypto, whatever else may come about, politics, what's current events, all while having a drink. Usually bourbon, sometimes some specialty other drinks. So tonight, I'm trying to finish off a bottle of Jefferson's tonight. Finally, thought it was kind of fitting since we had our a lot of politics this week, with Trump coming into office and things, and just felt like it was kind of fitting for the night. How about you?
So I'm doing my version of an old fashioned with Angel's Envy.
All right. Yeah. So, cheers to that.
Cheers.
So yeah, I wanted to. One of the things I was, we were kind of talking about off camera here a little bit, but I've been kind of listening to the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What'd you say his name was again? I'm terrible names.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yep. So kind of sparked some ideas that I was thinking about with just like crypto and the current state of our dollar and stuff like that. Back in 71, Nixon separated us from the gold standard, the dollar, which was because of the debt was increasing so much, I guess, because of the wars that were going on in Vietnam and stuff like that. So he thought it was a good idea to separate it. Now the dollar value, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're better with this than me, but from what I understand, the dollar value is maintained or is based on our debt and what other countries are debted to us and whether or not we can collect those debts, essentially. Basically with all of our trading that goes on in the world and stuff like that.
I could add some a little bit of detail.
Yeah, so add more to that.
Yeah, so now before 1913, we were 100% gold backed with effectively circulating paper currency. So 1-to-1 to gold. Mm-hmm. After 1913, it was a fractional reserve system. It was very strict reserve. And basically the lending was, I want to say 10-to-1. I'm not going to say that's just based off of memory. So if somebody's got the exact number, they can say. What happened by 1970, effectively the banks as a whole were over leveraged and outside of what they were supposed to for that reserve. So basically, and it was actually the French government that was actually calling the bluff. Mm-hmm. So they were basically exchanging whatever dollars they had for gold. So to save what gold deposits we had left came the full divorce from the dollar. And so basically there's several things that basically give the dollar value. One, it is a debt-based system at this point. Primarily world trade, and we're the world reserve currency. So it's the only real reason why it effectively has value. And also our willingness to give it away to other countries. So some of these executive orders coming up is like, hey, foreign aid stopping. So we're actually going to stop giving away the money. So that could actually, and I'm assuming that's kind of direction you're going to be heading.
A little bit, no, but it's going to.
But yeah, it's just like our some people have called it the petrodollar because we've had agreements, with OPEC, so that all oil trades are required to be in dollars, which means that to buy oil you have to hold dollars. So it basically did provide value. So instead of being gold backed, it's now oil backed. So the value of oil becomes extremely important.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's why he's drill, baby, drill, because he wants to bring back the value to the dollar by drilling, because we have all the reserves. But that is not where I was going. I was going to play a little advocate here and just say, what if, we have a very pro-crypto administration. What if they were to take that and use that as the gold standard as far as, and tie that to the dollar? I don't know. I mean, Bitcoin is potentially the gold standard, when it comes to crypto. I mean, everybody, a lot of people swear that Bitcoin's going to continue to go up at all the, forever, just continue and always have value. which, I could kind of see that. The only part is like, if we've talked about this in the past, if it becomes where it's more, crypto becomes more like, it depends on the direction we go with crypto. I think, if crypto becomes more of a, like we've talked about before, not so much an asset, but more of a commodity, right? Like more of like it actually does something and provides a service. There's going to be value in that. That's what that's what we believe a lot of times. But if it is more of a just something to put your money in, like Bitcoin seems to be, to maintain value and go up. What if we tied the dollar to that in some way as a country, and then now we have an asset that continues to climb and would pull the dollar up with it, kind of like what the gold standard would do? Thoughts?
Actually, I have several, and
Yeah.
this is kind of getting into some of the stuff that I wanted to talk to David. So we'll
And
see
that's
how far.
so it's good that, yeah, it's good. Good segue potentially. So
Yeah. And so we'll see how far we get, because basically, we're kind of stepping into the lane of economic theory, and we talked about, or I brought this up before, where what really gave gold value, even though that it is technically inflationary, there's still a lot of gold in the ground. It's just expensive to get to. And basically you'd have this like little sine wave traditionally in a healthy free market. You'd have this little sine wave of the value of gold. So if the gold became too valuable, in other words, basically you were able to get a lot of goods, you'd had a deflationary market effectively, right? So the strength of your purchasing power went too high. People would then go collect more gold because it had a lot more value, bring it to the market. The gold would then inflate, actually, reducing its purchasing power again. And so basically you had this like little sine wave, and ultimately you could just end up drawing a line down the middle, theoretically, basically saying over the extreme long term, it had a stable value of what you could ultimately purchase.
Right.
So it's like, and so the generationally, whoever was holding it would be able to buy the same things.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past.
Right.
Yep.
So here comes the problem with something like Bitcoin or a thing. And I don't know if you can actually solve this with technology, because the thing is, though, is that the inflation of gold is a natural inflation. What I mean by that is that when basically you have this pain point of it's so the environment is so deflationary, people go into the areas that were either too hard to get to, too expensive to get to, needed new technology. They needed to invent stuff, right? So there was this nature that was involved in the inflation of gold. You really can't do that with technology and stuff like Bitcoin, XRP. These things actually have a fixed quantity to them. So that means you can end up with this, more or less infinite, deflationary period by pinning to this, something like that.
Wouldn't it be the opposite though?
No, in other words,
not deflation, but inflation.
No, well, it's just like no, man. When I say that, I'm talking about the value of the goods.
Right.
So goods over time.
Well, no, but Bitcoin should always go up because of the fact that there's only so many of them. So it's
the value goes up,
right,
and then the value of everything around it goes down.
Right. But there's now, from my understanding, there are ways now to, I'm looking for here. There's ways now to actually take loans against crypto. So if you have Bitcoin and you have, let's say a few $100,000 in it, but you need to, instead of selling that crypto, but you need a loan for $50,000, you go and get a loan and have that loan against that. And that Bitcoin is now your asset that loan is against. So the idea is that you can pay that back. And as you're paying that back at a lower interest rate, this is what I was talking about, like rich people with debt, right? It's they can go get a loan for something using their asset. Their asset will be worth way more than, it will increase in percentage wise more than the increase in the cost of the loan. percentage of the loan. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like it's like you're borrowing money, let's say 3%, but you're just to throw numbers around, but your crypto is going up 5% a year or 5% whatever over time. Then that's a 2% difference. So you can pay this loan back and still have more money over here than you would if you would have sold it. You see what I'm saying? To use that money.
Kind
instead.
of, because that presents a different scenario what you're describing. Because if you're saying that you're going to have effectively going back to a gold standard, and that's what I'm trying to describe, right?
It's essentially what you're doing. It's just the
right,
like you said, gold fluctuates or can go flat. And Bitcoin will potentially never do that because of the fact that it's no
and
more.
This is
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So for it to be a Bitcoin standard, right? So if we're saying that there's going to be paper money printed 1-to-1, let's say 1-to-1 to Satoshis, not to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, right, it's going to be high value, it's very limited. You go to several, zeros for, the number of Satoshis that are there. I think was 10 million or something like that.
Yeah, I don't really understand Satoshi myself.
Yeah, it's highly fractionalized.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that when you actually have a standard system, the only way to borrow on the system, because you can't print into existence, it has to exist. Right. So that means that somebody is saving, which is capital, and they're the ones you're borrowing from. So somebody doesn't have access to what you borrowed. And if you squander it and go bankrupt, their chances are they're not going to get that back. That's what borrowing is in a standard system.
Yeah. Then
the way you're kind of describing it would be a fractional system. And we've seen that the problems with fractional systems.
Yeah.
Because there always are going to be risks. And the way I was actually describing, Bitcoin and deflation, I was actually thinking about this in terms of a true, standard system where things are going to be measured 1-to-1.
Right. Which, that's stable coins, right?
Well,
potentially.
The thing is, though, is that a stable coin is going against a fiat system,
right,
which is our current system. And if you were going to basically a system that is effectively a standard or backed by something that is as good as gold, just keep using that until something replaces it.
Right.
But when you go back to that, it definitely raises some issues and questions. And I've actually had this conversation recently. It's just some of the awesome rocket work that everybody's doing. Don't want to discount Jeff Bezos and getting Blue Origin off the ground, but you have Elon Musk and SpaceX catching boosters,
right?
Coming at near free fall speeds and getting that thing to slow down and not destroy its little grappling hook. That's just cool.
It is pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, there are asteroids floating in space that are basically within the distance of Mars. They're pretty close to us. And with modern robotics, because these things are, there's iron up there, there's gold up there, giant mountains of what we consider rare earth minerals, but they're the size of mountains. They're the, microplanets, effectively.
Right. Yeah.
And it effectively takes these limited supplies of the materials we have on Earth and basically pushes them to infinity. Right. So gold's value in the long term is just going to dwindle, potentially in our lifetime, because we're both still, in the grand scheme of things, relatively young. We might be long retired by the time it happens, but
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like that's why Bitcoin could potentially be the replacement of gold. That's why it's like, I don't know. I'm just little devil's advocate on that was my thought. Yeah. Just is that a possibility that maybe
it is definitely
administration is looking at as a way to, or we just go to crypto as our currency, which I have a hard time with that happening, at least anytime soon. Where the dollar pretty much just goes away. and we replace it with crypto. I just don't see that happening.
There's a lot of things that would have to happen, but at one, I mean, it's just like, and it's like, it always, rolls back, being U.S. based, the Constitution is, in the Constitution, Congress has the authority over weights and measures. In other words, they just determine how much, in weight something is worth, the measure, right? And it calls out specifically gold and silver as money in the Constitution. So one of the first things that we would need to go to a new monetary system would be a constitutional amendment. That's where the process would start. So we would need to decide going up front, as U.S. citizens, not, I'm not really telling the rest of the world to screw off, but for something to actually to change in the United States and have it be above board and transparent, that is step number one. What do we want to see? And basically have the amendment to change basically the wording of, instead of gold and silver being money, XYZ is money. And then basically Congress then has the authority, by law to determine what the weight is, in other words, how much of this thing,
the value, right?
Yeah. And they basically now stamped that, and that effectively now that becomes your backed currency, because we're supposed to have a backed currency. Right. It's built in.
Right. But I think that's part of the problem is you kind of don't.
Right. And that's the problem with the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of people that wrote books on this. There was actually an entire a series of things that is apparently really hard to find. I haven't managed to find it. It's basically the law that never was, which basically is the case against the Federal Reserve, basically saying that the way the constitutional amendment that instantiated it and the IRS were actually done unconstitutionally. So basically the entire system as it stands really is unlawful, or constitutionally. But without actually, concrete evidence, actually knowing all the history around it, it's really hard to actually prove one way or another.
So you had something you want this kind of segue into off of this.
It kind of, because it kind of fits, and it also kind of goes to the devil's advocate in the other direction.
Okay.
But Brad Garlinghouse, basically in an interview, and him and a bunch of crypto people, tech giants. There was a lot of tech giants at the inauguration and the inaugural ball.
Yeah.
And he did an interview. And during the interview, he said that a lot of the engineers that he's working with that work at Ripple were engineers on Bitcoin. And they moved over to XRP. And then somebody basically took that. So not necessarily 100% Brad's work, but they took that and says, this is the reason why some people in some circles called Bitcoin beta test coin.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it was the test, not the plan.
Right. Again, the first one, we've talked about this.
Right.
The likelihood of the first one being the one is hard, but
right. It is definitely a hard technical problem to solve.
Right.
And that's why they transitioned over from, payments. I saw somebody post up, recently, it's just like, oh my God, did you see how much value this person transmitted? And it was like millions of dollars. And they were like, how cheap it was. Do you want to guess how cheap the transaction fee was?
No. Okay. Millions of dollars was transferred.
No. Oh. Well, $1 million was transferred.
Okay.
But it cost them $4.50 to transmit it. And I'm like, you're not buying bubble gum with this. Yeah. You're not doing micropayments with it. It's just like, yes. I mean, it's like, when you're talking about millions of dollars in transfer, 4.5 is a very small percentage.
$4.50 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
For the
yeah, but that's the transfer, right? So like, if I don't think it matters the value of what you're transferring, does it?
No.
It's a transfer tax. It's basically what's happening. It could have been $10 and it would cost you $4.50 to transfer it. That's it. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I mean, it's a similar problem that Ethereum has, Polygon has. When they have network congestion, the fees ramp up really quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's why they keep, that's why it's for XRP.
Well, I mentioned them because I know you're.
Yeah, but I mean, but like you can't. The fact is, there is like it costs nothing nearly to transfer. With XRP, it's in super fast. So it's the utilities there. It's just now it's the adoption. I think is what.
Well, it is the adoption, and it raises for me. I was like, I'm invested in it. It's like I'm trying to have a diversified portfolio because
I'm with
I
you.
don't know. I don't know who's going to win.
Right. Nobody.
But I have reservations. About it is it's like in the grand scheme of things, it's only at I clocked in at 1,000 TPS, so it's not one of the fastest.
Right.
They're really just now talking about smart contracts, so they don't have it natively yet. So some people found workarounds, like they found workarounds, for Bitcoin that kind of sort of work. But who is the CTO of Ripple again? I forgot his name. Schwartz.
Schwartz. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he actually mentioned that one of the proposals they have put together actually adds native smart contracts, but there was some pushback on that. And then I saw this other thing of Ethereum, and it's not, I would say, atrociously popular, but popular enough to where it came up on my feed. And not only are applications moving away from it, some of the more easy ones that are going over to other Ethereum compatible smart chains, kind of like a Hedera, but some are actually rewriting their code, to Algorand and others. So there's actually been a steady bleed, and this recent one was actually talking about the traffic alone on Ethereum is actually down. So even though their price is still a speculative market,
right,
but the actual total usage is shrinking. So
yeah, I've heard a lot of people are moving away from Ethereum. 2.0 didn't do what they thought, I guess. So
yeah,
but I mean that's the thing too is like it may not be the fastest right now, but we know who built it. They're a full blown company. They actually, they're doing other things. They can release new releases and increase the utility to it.
well, that turns into the thing though. So when we're talking about actually, no, even though we are talking about software and blockchains, right? They are technically upgradable,
Right.
but this is actually software as a service, I would say.
Yeah.
You need to be able to either guarantee uptime or have very minimalistic. When I say minimalistic, we talked about what 5 nines meant prior. Is it's like you need to do like 10 nines or almost guaranteed no downtime, which is very hard to do.
What you're saying is if they do an upgrade, they need to do it where it's not even noticeable by anybody, basically. Yes,
exactly.
I'm sure they'll be able to do that. It's not.
Well, but that's the engineering challenge. That's why a lot of these change Ethereum as well. It's like they do proposals, then they go through the development, then they do a test net, and then they do a release.
Right.
And that engineering work takes time. At the same time, while they're going through this engineering process to get to a release,
they're falling behind.
They're falling behind.
Yeah.
Is this like because Hedera, instead of actually doing the traditional blockchain, they did the DAG. They actually were the first ones to do a DAG, and they're actually doing some tremendous work. And their technology is now integrated in with WeSat, and it's gotten launched through SpaceX. They're being picked up by Intel and NVIDIA for AI work and integration of CPUs. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Algorand is actually doing a lot more for payments right now than pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
But
it's also they're all going. That's all a different market than what market I guess you want to call it. Than what XRP is going after too, though. XRP wants to be the Swift replacement.
They do. And
essentially
here comes the funny part about it, because I kind of blew up the feed with a few of these. Is the Philippine central banks are going with Hedera.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the Central Bank of Denmark, because of the MICAR requirements for the Euro D. I forgot the name of the company, but basically they are releasing a Euro D, which is a 1-to-1 euro. It is euro on chain. It's not a stable coin.
Yeah.
It is a euro on chain, and they chose Algorand for it. So these are actual implementations, real world assets that are deployed today. That's why I say, even though I'm invested in XRP, they've mentioned all these banks and all of these partnerships, but all the partnerships, all they truly mean is we have embedded developers, and we're doing tests to make sure our technology works.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been a deployment yet. Whereas I'm seeing this deployment over here, this deployment over here, of real world uses. That's kind of like where I'm getting at with the reservation. I'm not poo-pooing XRP. I'm not poo-pooing the technology.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Well, also to me, part of it could be the XRPs is part of it. There's a bigger picture we're not seeing potentially too.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they're working on in the background.
Right. Well, we don't know what we don't know until we know it.
Exactly. So it's basically like kind of XRP is the base, and I think I think they released something else. Wasn't like a some sort of stable coin.
The real USD.
Yeah. So it's like they're kind of building off of that base essentially. I mean, I think it's going to use XRP as part of the transfer. It's Ripple's the company. It's like now they're building their different pieces. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's again, like you said, we don't know who's going to be the one, so that's why we try to diversify and as far as investing, But
I don't say the one. It's just like I still strongly believe it's going to be a multi-chain future.
Yeah.
There's not a singular best technology that's going to satisfy all the different use cases that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely going to be a basket. I mean, just to kind of put a pin on that, to say it's like, I'm not trying to declare a winner. I'm not trying to give, financial advice, be like, you must invest in this because, I said so. But just because of all the integrations that I've seen recently, it looks like Chainlink is about here to be, going to be here to stay. You got Swift integrating with it so they can get their upgrade. You've got XRP integrating with them so they can get real-time data for their real USD.
Mm-hmm.
Hedera is integrating with them. Algorand's integrating with them. So I mean, it's just like, and that's what they are now. That's what they build themselves as being, is the layer zero, the chain of chains. Chain link, right? It's in the name.
That's true. Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting things happening. So
there's still more. I think you wanted to.
There's always more.
Yeah. But that's kind of what you wanted to talk about generally. It was
generally, it's just like again, I'm not trying to spread FUD. It just says my personal thoughts on where I see things going. Is just like truly, if Michael Saylor wanted Bitcoin to be successful, he needs to give up on the idea of trying to make Lightning a thing, and say, okay, Boss and Cardano, that's going to be the winning thing. I have XYZ issue with the way Cardano works because it's not decentralized enough or whatever. I'm going to fund to fix these issues, and start promoting the fact that I'm funding it. Mm-hmm. He could actually turn basically the script around. Instead, he's trying to become a Bitcoin bank. And it was like, well, Bitcoin exists to get rid of that centralization. So if you're now promoting it as needing to be centralized, and there's other things, I just don't have the time to actually dive into it. It's just like, well, if you really want to talk about centralization, PC power and cooling. It takes a lot of energy to mine Bitcoin. Yes, there are some solar miners out there. Some solar miners actually do happen to win. But there are crypto miners. These people buy warehouses and or there's data centers and they rent out space. So even if you have a warehouse that's housing 10,000 different people, it's still a single building that could have a catastrophic failure. how, I mean, it's like, how really decentralized can Bitcoin be? It's like, you don't just give me a node count. It's just like, where are the nodes? Who owns the nodes in those locations? Is it truly as just decentralized? Has somebody actually done these statistical analysis of how the distribution actually works? Even if the nodes are just on decentralized, the actual Bitcoin itself is actually becoming heavily centralized in a very few strong hands. So Michael Saylor, BlackRock, well, through their ETF. But I mean, it's like Larry Fink is now talking about it, so I'm sure he owns some personally, so you can kind of go on and on. There's actually several really powerful people that are in this constant buy and hold state to where it's just going to end up in a very few hands.
Right. True.
And to kind of like rotate into the next conversation is there was next space and earlier today, Algorand Foundation talking about staking and staking rewards, and some of the things that they baked in to one, encourage decentralization, and also to prevent dominating the network. So, excuse me. Yeah. So a couple of things that was mentioned is that somebody actually got an Algorand node to run on a Steam Deck. So it doesn't take a lot of power to run it. Algorand as a network is actually extremely efficient. One of the things that that was brought up is you need 30,000 algo to earn rewards, but you need actually about an algo to run a node. So if you want to altruistically run a node, just a low power device, one algo, you could run a node and help with consensus. So you could participate in the decentralization really cheaply. Doesn't take a lot of hardware. On top of that, there actually is an upper bound limit. The upper bound limit is 70 million algo. The reason why they put it, it seems like extremely high.
So it's like a tap, like you can tap out.
Exactly.
Okay.
So basically, that means that exchanges typically have billions of an asset, right? So, and the way Algorand is actually doing this, or the Algorand Foundation decided to do staking, is it's a liquid stake. There's no lockup period. So that means that an exchange could actually then take all the Algorand they have, put it on a node, and if somebody withdraws, they could just withdraw from that node wallet.
Okay.
Right? But if they have billions of the token, they can't dominate the entire consensus.
Right.
Right. Basically pulling away all the different voices and, take away the basic.
It's kind of it's throttling essentially.
Right. So they definitely took a lot of lessons learned from a lot of different staking programs that have been attempted to see what worked, what didn't work, and why did they or did they not, and try to apply them. And as of right now, 17% of the total circulating supply of Algorand is actually currently staked, and the rewards don't start until tomorrow.
Oh wow!
So well, I mean, today's Wednesday, so no, they'll be starting about 2 p.m. on Thursday, is the rough guess, because I'm actually counted by the number of blocks that are generated.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's happening, and that's going to, again, not financial advice, but that's going to hit a supply shock.
Right. Yeah, but you just said that you actually, it's not that you're locking your Algorand up to where you can't access it. It's still accessible.
Well, right. It's still accessible if the need arises, but it's like, how many people, right now is like, what I'm trying to do is actually build that wallet up. In other words, I'm trying to build it up as a long-term savings.
You're trying to increase your holding.
Right. And that way I could also increase the voting power of my node. So that way I could actually propose more blocks per day. Right. And right now it's like I'm at a block every day and a half, 2 days, something like that. I'm trying to get it to where I could actually do at a minimum a block a day. I would like to be able to do more than that, but
you're snowballing is what you're trying to do.
Right. So I'm trying to build that up. And then I probably would consider, it's like, okay, then I can start shaving off, and then this, becomes, a little bit of algo that I could actually use in a daily basis. But yeah, it is liquid. So if an emergency arose, I could withdraw from it, but I prefer not to.
Right. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. You have something of value. You leverage that for your loan because you know that's going to increase in value, whereas your loan will not. It will actually decrease in value, and you pay that down at a lower rate as your investment. That's smart debt. Is what you would call that.
Right.
Yep. I'm not saying you can do that with Algorand. I'm just pivoting to that example, because that's what, like you said, I'd rather not pull that money.
Well, the thing is, though, is that, and again, this is like Robert's, a smart guy, but the ratio of high interest earning to low interest debts only exists because we're in a fiat system, because we have like this fake money system. If we had market rate interest for taking a loan, the amount of interest earned is not necessarily the interest on a debt. And, they're either they're going to be equal to each other, or the debt interest is effectively going to be a little bit higher. So effectively, like if you had a healthy bank that never did a bank run or actually lent out more than they had, is right. You would lock your money up into a CD, right? So in other words, a long-term, I'm giving this money to the bank. They're going to invest it through loans, right? So they're building up basically a capital pool. So, and let's say that it was actually kind of, healthy. So the entire pool has been like 5% across, and they did several loans against it, and the loans were 10%. So as the loans are getting paid, everybody that was earning would get a little bit of that back. So if in an emergency, yes, I would take a penalty for withdrawing my CD, but I could still actually get my money because not all of mine was loaned. It was basically out of this pool that they had. Right. And, all things being equal. So basically the actual earnings don't necessarily equal the interest rate. So if we had healthy money and a healthy economy outside of this kind of system that we have.
I think you're thinking more short term than long term. Whereas like when people talk about that, it's more like, I mean, for one example is, I think last run when Bitcoin got real expensive, when it hit ATH, and stuff like that. They talked about this guy who bought a pizza back when it was like, $100 for a Bitcoin. And they're saying how expensive that pizza is now. Could you bet? I mean, how expensive that pizza even now is, like, if he would have held on to that.
It was like 32 Bitcoin.
It would have been worth so much more now. Like you're talking like hundreds, millions of dollars. If it was 32 Bitcoin, it's,
Well, I mean,
that's but $32 million right now. So it's like,
so,
but that's what I'm trying to say. It's a long-term thing. So it's like you'd rather hang on to the asset rather than.
Yes, you would rather. No,
in long term, it's going to be worth way more than that loan cost.
In this future, where that is true, right? So if you're saying it's like I'm going to leverage my Bitcoin to take a loan, that is kind of risky because Bitcoin is very volatile currently.
Right.
What we are talking about, or the way I have this in my mind, which is the only reason we're probably talking across each other a little bit, is in this fictional future, Bitcoin, or let's say insert your favorite, maxi token, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It is effectively, the currency of the world. Everything is now priced in it. Or, you can say it's like it's 1-to-1 to your currency, right? So you can think in dollars, you can think in yen, you can think in won, you can think of euro. It's now 1-to-1, right? So that means that all products effectively are priced against this. So this thing is now effectively flatlined. So now you actually have this falling curve of, as productions get more better, or supply increases, it's like your purchasing power is going to increase. But this thing should be effectively stable across. Its value or perceived value technically doesn't change, because when new technology comes out, that new technology is going to be really expensive. People are still going to chase the new technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you still have the dominant that, you know, supply and we can actually get to true supply and demand curves. And that's what I'm talking about. So once that flat line happens, then you're actually talking about interest rates that are within a natural or market-based interest rate. The reason why we have a conversation with the way we talk about interest rates now is because they're very unhealthy because they're manipulated. We have a Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve comes up with a base rate. The base rate is actually painfully low because we have this highly inflationary dollar to where they have to turn on the printing press because they're trying to pump the market, because if the market crashes, then the administration looks bad, blah, 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 right? Because once you actually have this replacement, you know, back to a stable currency, you know, then you're actually just talking about true natural forces, you know, the actual market. You know, whether you call it, you know, the wisdom of the crowds, the stupidity crowds, the crazy of the crowds, you know, whatever, you know, the way you want to phrase it,
Right.
That's what it becomes, you know, and then we can get back to what, you know, true capitalism is. You know, it was just like, you know, before we actually had a central bank, because now we actually have, you know, what's effectively called a crony capitalism, this weird marriage between, you know, corporate and government. But, you know, it's just like, you know, capital was your aunt, your uncle, your father, you know, somebody that you knew saved a bunch of money. That's the capital. You go to them with a business plan, or you go to a bunch of friends with a business plan. It's like, I have an idea for this business. This is what my plan is. This is what you're going to rate of return is. And they can decide to take their savings, their capital, their hard earnings, and invest in you. And they're expecting a return on that investment.
Right.
I mean, that's basically, you know, simplistic terms. I mean, that's like, you know, the 100 level, right?
Yeah.
Of what capitalism is. You know, we haven't had that in a long time. I mean, this has been so long since we've had it. It's not really being taught. Nobody really understands the basics of it. You know, they just think, oh, this is it. This is so evil. And it was like, well,
Right.
it's not really this.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of terms, you know, it's been twisted.
Yep. Interesting. So I am on empty.
I'm not.
And you are not. But I don't really have much more I wanted to talk about tonight myself.
Let me just scroll back because so basically that Standard Bank, that was one that I posted to the thing, but that was the Hedera announcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you want to go back to just crypto in general, I think we're also like still, I wouldn't say early, we're like in the middle of things right now. I think again, we've talked about this before. I don't know if we're actually going to see some parabolic craziness go right now.
I mean, and that goes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it could, you know, there's a perfect storm brewing right now potentially for it. But well, you know, we'll see. But I don't think I know some things are pulling back off and on. I think that's just these things are stabilizing a bit. And I think we're definitely gonna see a big run happen. And I don't think we're too far from it, from what I can see based on charts and stuff like that right now.
Yeah, a lot of the charts are now looking good. Yeah, they're fluctuating like the way they usually do, kind of up and down.
It's stabilizing. You're just building.
The biggest thing is that if for, you know, people entering the market, if they actually have any remembrance of the previous one, is it's like that they have to remember, you know, a couple things. It's like interest rates were basically effectively zero the last bull run. On top of that, stimulus checks went out because of the pandemic.
People had money.
Basically. Right. People had money. They had easy access to loans with, you know, because of the low interest rates. It made the market pump hard. Yeah. The Fed chairman is very reluctant to reduce interest rates. actually, I kind of applaud that. Is it's like we don't want, a highly inflationary dollar. We want a strong dollar. So it's like, ultimately, I'd say get rid of the Federal Reserve and let's go to basically banks competing against each other on interest rates and products and blah blah blah. That effectively brings back a true free market in banks. We don't have a free market in banks. We have a central bank, which effectively means that we have a manipulation or a centralization at that point.
Right.
So yeah. So that's really constraining things.
Maybe it'll be part of the Doge.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it'd be kind of hard because there is that constitutional amendment, blah blah blah. Standing up the central bank, touched on that. But I might start amending my thoughts a little bit, because one of the primary things that's happening is the concept of the U.S. based crypto, and the fact that it's going to be. The thought is. And I think it was supposed to be today or tomorrow. Basically, executive orders around crypto is going to start landing.
Yep.
So it's going to be soon. So the promise was any U.S. based or created cryptos are going to become basically tax free. I think that's just going to alleviate the capital gains, not necessarily the income.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see exactly how that plays out and what that means. But that means CoinMarketCap now actually has a dedicated tab to US based cryptos. So there could potentially be a early flush, because I've talked about flushes of the market. I've compared it to the .bomb era.
Mm-hmm.
That could potentially cause an early flush and money start filtering into that basket.
Right.
But in that anticipation. So there could be some crazy pops. As I said, it's like nobody has a clue what's about to happen.
Right.
The only thing I know is it's going to get nuts.
It's interesting.
And that's another word. Yeah, it's going to get interesting. I'm definitely here for the long term. I think I like my portfolio. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I'm happy with things too. I mean, I wish I had more of a lot of stuff, but it is what I can do right now. So
I got my average so low on so many things. I'm like, I don't want to be buying anymore. There's a lot, it's like you see crypto Twitter. It's like, did you buy the dip? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Because
I think now is I think we could personally, I think we've learned from the past bull run and what to do. And I think we can capitalize on this one potentially by releasing some of our, not everything. And that's where I'm at. I have percentages I want to hit, like as far as sell off, and then hold that to wait to the big dip, and then buy back in and to increase my holdings and stuff. So that's that's the plan. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you can't sell on the top. We all know that. We can't buy on the bottom. We all know that. But we got to figure out in between where we make sense.
Mm-hmm. It's like I've already kind of figured out what I want to sell, what I want to hold on to. It's like I'm really, I definitely got a lot of tokens on the Algorand network. I haven't.
No way.
Yeah. No, well, it definitely it's fun. It has a meme scene. I've gotten somebody on Twitter called me a degen because I was like, that is just too funny, and it was like I kind of bought it without actually reading about it. They're coming out with the game. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Dodd, but it's died of dysentery, and it's the idea of Oregon Trail. And there actually are making an Oregon Trail game, apparently, or style game, something in honor of it. And it's like, I kind of grew up playing Oregon Trail on floppy disk. So it's like, I just got it out of pure nostalgia because it's just, scratch that itch.
Yeah.
I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
That's funny.
I said, I do talk about HBAR. I do have a Hashpack wallet, but I haven't really played around with their token scene. I do actually have I forgot the name that is, but I do have some of their named NFTs. Basically, their domain, their domains. They're called NFTs on Algorand. So I do have a couple of that. So I played around with a little bit. It actually is kind of neat. They do finally actually have a phone app for the wallet, so it's not just a browser plugin. So there's been a lot of development there. It makes it a lot easier to use. So I mean, and that really is the biggest thing for me is that if I can't explain easily how to use something, it basically becomes hard to justify even for myself to hold it, because ease of use going forward is going to be the most paramount thing.
We've talked about that too. Yeah, it's
You
definitely easy
know,
use is key. Just in general, just to get the general public involved.
and I think I shared it with you, but there was a woman that's now shared 2 different videos using her new MasterCard integrated with Wallet. So she's buying groceries,
right,
using crypto on chain.
On chain, yeah, that's interesting.
And it's apparently dirt cheap. Now it works like from the way I actually read recently, it's effectively works the way like a prepaid debit card.
Right.
So basically, on chain, you do a single transaction of loading the debit card, and then you just use Google Pay or Apple Pay to tap and done.
Well, it'd be nice if whatever money you've done that with it follows the market, so that way it increases or decreases with the market.
I think right now it's restricted to your stable coin.
Yeah.
So basically, you would be putting USD on it, so there would be no fluctuations of value.
Gotcha.
But I mean, yeah, I get your point, because you want to be able to say do a single transaction, and then from there it kind of figures out and then just does a inline. Technically, is that Algorand does do have the concept of an atomic swap, of being able to do a swap a single transaction,
right?
So that theoretically would be possible. I just don't know if they've done that integration, or I don't think it's integrated that way.
Again, unfortunately, it's early.
It is early. We are very early.
Yeah. Early adopters are what make it run though too. So
yeah.
All right. So
no, it's like thank you for joining us for another episode. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below.
All right. Till next time.
Till next time.